Episode number two, the Sweaty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Justin. With me today is Mr. Zach Baker to
Yo,
chop it up, talk some football. All right.
let's get after it.
Alrighty. So first off, we're going to start off with the NFL news of the past week, the stuff that happened since we last released on last Wednesday. Just kind of a scheduling note. We'll be filming these podcasts on Tuesday and hopefully have them out Wednesday night, early Thursday, maybe Thursday night at the latest. Um, so we'll start off with the NFL news, the NFL schedule release. We're filming this on the 13th. So when this is out, the NFL schedule will be out. There's already some games that are announced. According to Zach, some odds are already being released on the games. And so, I mean, the season kicks off September 4th, Eagles and Cowboys. That should be a really good game. A lot of fantasy superstars in that game. Um, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff. Right now, what we're seeing is kind of the overseas games, a lot of the foreign games, which is a lot of fun. Waking up at 6 a.m. to either make or break your week right off the bat. Yeah, the Eagles and Cowboys kicking off the season is a lot of fun. Love those divisional games. 46 point over under. We won't tell you till we get a little closer what defenses we like. If you're streaming that early in the season. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff with the schedule. We're excited to get some parlays in tomorrow night when the full thing is out.
Yeah, it looks kind of cool. There's some games in Ireland, some games in Spain, some of the regularly scheduled games in London and Germany. So excited for that. But yeah, like Zach said, we're not going to be announcing any uh any defensive streamers this early. We'll wait on that. The big news of the last week was the NFL trade. Everybody coming out of the draft said, "What are the Cowboys doing? Are they going to get anybody?" And they answered. Yes, they traded for George Pickens, giving up a third rounder and then basically a pick swap in the seventh round. That doesn't really matter. But a third rounder for George Pickens. Do you think the Cowboys underpaid? Do you think it's a good deal for either side?
It's scary. I won't say they overpaid for sure. I think that they very clearly needed another someone else to threaten the secondary. You can't really put it all on CeeDee Lamb's shoulders. He kind of struggled with injuries a little bit, just kind of because of the high volume that he takes in, and someone, especially someone who can really stretch the field in the way that George Pickens can. I think the fit is so good that I'm very okay with the third. They genuinely lose a lot of trades like that. We could talk about the Mingo trade for a fourth last year. That was nothing like this, in my opinion. The scary part is everybody says you don't buy a wide receiver that Mike Tomlin is selling, and I think that I really do believe in that. And especially when the path to this being a disaster is so obvious. George Pickens is such an eccentric guy. It could you could very easily see him kind of going off the rails like like some other Steelers greats at wide receiver. But at least for weeks 1 through 3, it'll be really entertaining, and I think it will be really good for fantasy. I do think that even though you get some target competition in Dallas, I think CeeDee Lamb's value has gone up. Uh, Pickens' value absolutely went up. Massive quarterback upgrade there. So really cool for the fantasy landscape. But yeah, we could see some fireworks.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the memes that are going around. It's like Dak throwing a pick, George Pickens and some random DB 20 yards down the field, just slugging it out. And he's definitely a dynamic personality. He's a really good player on the field, and nobody's concerned about CD Lamb. Nobody's thinking George Pickens coming in is going to tank CD Lamb. CD is an established number one, and ironically, he actually had a shoulder injury for the back half of last year, partially because he was just carrying that team for the whole year. But in my opinion, this is good for every single player on both sides except the Steelers quarterback, whoever that is. If Rodgers comes out of his ayahuasca retreat and decides he still wants to play football after he's dragged it out for, I don't know why he's dragging it out this long other than he's Aaron Rodgers. But other than that, I mean, DK now has no target competition. So we talked last week about DK not necessarily having a great quarterback situation, but now he's going to be the only person. So whoever it is, if it's Mason Rudolph, um, if it is Aaron Rodgers, that he's going to be force fed absolutely nonstop. And you mentioned it, CeeDee Lamb, you can't just roll two corners over to his side and have a safety over the top. You actually have somebody with a legitimate amount of speed and somebody that you're actually worried about if they get past you. So you're going to have to play back and not just laser focus on CeeDee Lamb. So that'll be really good. Next piece of news, Jonathan Brooks going on the PUP out for 2025. You really feel for this guy. He got hurt end of his college career, tears his ACL, gets drafted fairly high by the Panthers. He was drafted, at least in our league, he was drafted in the second round. I'm pretty sure that that was the case for most fantasy football leagues, fantasy dynasty leagues, that is. And then he battles back from that. He's slowly getting worked into it. He looks like a pretty good backup for Chuba going forward on that extension, and then re-tears his ACL and he's out again. And so you almost wonder, like Jordan Travis retired a couple weeks ago, and like injuries, everybody kind of just says, well, they have this injury, so they're going to be out for this amount of time. We kind of forget that there's a really big mental aspect that goes into it. So he's already torn his ACL, gone through the recovery process for a whole year, battled back, got back into football shape, and to go out again. And so now he got, I don't know, I didn't see if he's got the actual surgery yet, but he's going to have to battle back. He's not going to be in for 2025. So he's battling back for an entire year again just to try to get back on the football field and try to get an opportunity. And so that part's a lot tougher than I think we realize, but I think it's just wheels up for Chuba for this year is my takeaway. What are your thoughts on that?
It's really sad what happened to Jonathan. I think that it's the ugly part of football. It kind of is occupational hazard. So yeah, I feel really bad for him, but from a fantasy sense, I am completely writing him off, and I pray that someone somewhere clips this, and I'm so wrong in 2, 3 years. I don't think I will be. I think that it's very safe to leave Jonathan Brooks on the waiver wire in all of your leagues. Really, no matter how deep it is, I don't see a world where after blowing it twice and just in kind of ugly fashion the second time, I think the NFL GMs are going to feel the same amount of going into signing him or working him out as we do. And I do think he's going to try. You know, everybody's going to try when they face an injury like that. I think he will be 2 years from now trying out with a team. He's going to get some steam. I'm going to be in full fade. I think that the world where this works out for him from a fantasy perspective, it's got to be sub 5%, and that's just not a bet I'm ever going to be comfortable making. I pray I'm wrong. Please, I hope I sound like an idiot in 2 years, uh, but I don't think I will, unfortunately.
So Chuba's going to be 27 when he's coming back. So the bull case for Jonathan Brooks is at the point that he comes back, he'll have 2 years left on his rookie contract. So he'll still be under contract with the Panthers. Chuba will be 27, and so if he can get back into shape, maybe he can play himself into a backup. And if at that point Chuba is starting to decline, maybe he kind of steps in as the heir apparent. But I mean, best case scenario, he's fighting to be a viable starter in 2 years. And that's not really somebody that you want. I know I just picked him up in our main dynasty league, and so I just threw him on the IR. And at the end of this year, when he comes off the IR, I will throw him on the pup. But honestly, if too many players on my team get hurt, I'll probably just cut him and move on. Um, Next piece of news is Derek Carr retiring. This one's sad. Um, this one is another, the mental part of injuries are tougher than we realize. He I've seen was informed that the only way to get back from that injury was going to be surgery. He was going to try to rehab it, and surgery was the only option. And at this point, he'd been in the league for 11 years, and he was coming back to the Saints. And the Saints, even with Derek Carr, didn't necessarily look like a Super Bowl contender this year. And so he decided to hang up the cleats, spend some time with his family before his body completely disintegrated, which I respect. This one is tough for everybody outside of Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler, who on any pretty much any other team would not be getting an opportunity, but because of the way things shook out, they will be getting an opportunity. And I mean, to defend Spencer Rattler, I'm kind of a Spencer Rattler guy, even though the evidence is stacking against him. Um, the I think he started 5 or 6 games last year, and Olave was out pretty much all of them. Shaheed was out for I think all of them, and then Kamara was out for most of them. Their O line. I mean, one of the games, it's got to be one of the worst games of all time. That Thursday night game where Bub Means was his wide receiver one, that was an absolute train wreck. So I guess what are your takeaways as far as like the Saints? Is it what happens to their fantasy assets? Are either Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck fantasy viable?
I'm a big Tyler Shuck guy. I think that Spencer Rattler will not get an opportunity to start week one. I think that you are definitely throwing Tyler Shuck to the Wolves, but I do believe in him. He was my QB2 in this draft class. I would have drafted him situation and all. I would have drafted him as a QB2 for fantasy in rookie drafts. He went the 303. I had the 304, but I would have very confidently drafted him at 304. I think he's talented. I think that he gets a bad rap because of his age, but you look at why he's coming out so late, and you can tell the story and you can see how it works. The film is very good. The athleticism is there. He looks the part. I have a lot of faith that it's going to look better than expected. I've actually drafted Chris Olave in a startup in the past couple of days, and I've made trade offers to Chris Olave in a couple of leagues. I'm bullish. I think that Tyler Shuck could. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I think he could be serviceable in year one. I don't think that he has a super high ceiling. But as far as a superstar, I'm willing to call Olave a superstar. I think that he'll be able to support him for fantasy purposes. Little worried still about Rashid Shaheed because kind of a burner. That's kind of how he profiles. So I'd like to see it first from Rashid, but I would love to cash in on the discounts we'll be getting on Olave right now. Sad to see Derek Carr go. Sad to see Derek Carr go. We've watched him for a long time. I think that he will end up being one of the like all-time underrated quarterbacks. Not that I think he was great or even mediocre in a lot of seasons, but he was the kind of guy you feel okay going into a season with. You know what I mean? He doesn't feel like you feel about Aaron Rodgers right now if you're the Steelers. I'm sure the Steelers would much rather have a Derek Carr of 2019 than a Aaron Rodgers in 2025. So sad to see him go.
100% agree. So when you talk about his age, you mean 25-year-old Tyler Shuck, who was in college for 7 years. He's the same age as Justin Fields, who was on his third NFL team, Trevor Lawrence, who's on his second contract, Bailey Zappi, same age as Brock Purdy, Will Levis, Jake Hayner, actually the guy he's competing against. I mean, yeah, this guy is incredibly old. It's actually it's kind of crazy with the extra COVID year that everybody got. I think he's going to be the last. I saw a stat. He's going to be the last player drafted that's born before 2000. But yeah, going back to Derek Carr for fantasy football, he was just kind of like the perennial quarterback too. If you were playing in a two quarterback or super flex league, he was just a guy that nobody was excited really to have. But if he was filling the back of your bench, if he was filling your quarterback two spot, if you had a really bad bye week for your quarterbacks, he was always a guy that you could pick up and you could count on to not just completely implode, give you six picks, 100 yards, and check out. Um, I think it's probably bad for all the Saints, and I'm not quite sure that even if Spencer Rattler, who you don't think has a chance, even if I don't think it matters which one of them get the job. I was looking earlier, and Spencer Rattler, I don't think had a game over 15 fantasy points in his six starts, so I don't know that it really matters outside of a super flex league to maybe take a flyer on a potential starting quarterback. Other than that, I'm not really sure it matters. I think it just kind of hurts everybody. I think we kind of buried the lead. This is kind of the Saints going into the Arch Manning sweepstakes. I think they're probably in the try to tank for the number one pick.
I think Tyler Shuck's going to keep him out of the number one pick. I think Shuck is going to go out and win a couple of games. I get he's old, I understand, but you mentioned the COVID year. He lost 3 seasons to injury, and the tape was great. The tape was great. A lot of respected analysts have come out and said that hey, if he was not 27 years old, he would have been a surefire first round pick from what he put on tape. None of the injuries really scare you as far as like lingering injuries, things that kind of take away his explosiveness. He's an athlete. I think the league's sleeping on Tyler Shuck. I'm really excited to see him. Arch Manning will not. He will not be going to the Saints at the 101 next year. I know that's kind of not really a hot take, but uh, I feel very confident. I feel very confident taking the discount. Now, you're taking a discount for a reason. I'm not saying Chris Olave is going to have a top five wide receiver season, but take the discount now while you can. While there's a lot of uncertainty, people will be feeling that way, and I believe that there's going to be value there.
There you go. All right, last piece of news that we have is Trey Hendrickson came out today and he said that he is not going to play on his current deal and him and the Bengals have not had contract extension talks because he was asked if he wanted to stay and what the progress was looking like, and he said he really wants to get a deal done, but nobody's even been in contact with his agent yet. The Bengals are notoriously cheap. They had to sell naming rights to their stadium in order to pay Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like to get everything done, they had to sell naming rights to their stadium because they're fairly cheap. And I think really the main takeaway from this, I don't know, I obviously don't know what's going to happen with the Trey Hendrickson deal, whether they're going to pay him or not, or if he's going to go somewhere else. But the main takeaway is the Bengals defense is still going to suck, just like they did all of last year. They're going to be a sieve. They're going to give up 40 points a game, and Joe Burrow is going to have to chuck it. We might get a back-to-back Triple Crown winner with Jamar Chase. Um, I mean, Joe Burrow is going to be throwing for 404 every single game. For a pocket passer, I think he's about as locked in as you can get just because that defense is going to be so bad. They've locked in T. Higgins, they've locked in Jamar, they've locked in Joe Burrow. Those are the three guys on offense, and they don't have a defense. So I mean, that's really where you want to be as a fantasy. I mean, looking at it from our perspective, not the NFL perspective, but where you want to be is you want to have a team that's bad on defense, so you're going to have to score, and you want a team where you can tell where the targets are going and who the fantasy assets are that you want to have.
I think the offense is going to look very similar to what it did last year. I do think if he doesn't play this year, I would rather start offensive assets on a team with a solid defense than a horrible defense. I think that the garbage time really only gives you two max drives a game of kind of like fake production, empty calorie production. I actually I worry. I worry about what not being able to maintain run pass uncertainty does to an offense. I worry about what letting two edge rushers tee off on Joe Burrow for 60 minutes a game does. I'm a little nervous. I would much rather see Hendrickson there. I think that that's a common sentiment that they, like you kind of said, wheels up. You know where the targets are going. He's gonna have to throw for 404 to win games next year, and I think that's a narrative you may be able to capitalize right now. We still watched them miss the playoffs last year. We watched them miss the playoffs, get the an outlier season from the wide receiver one. And now it's looking like they could very well be getting worse. I may be wanting to jump ship now. Maybe I'm being too contrarian, but that you could probably get a ton of values telling that story about Jamar Chase is going to get 15 targets a game, and they're going to be playing from behind, and they're going to be in 30 to 40 point shootouts. Uh, that it's possible, absolutely possible. But a lot of times we see teams with bad defenses be unable to play from behind. And if anyone could do it, it's Joe and Jamar. But it'll be very interesting to see what that actually looks like in practice a second year in a row, especially with Joe Burrow having some durability concerns.
hmm Yeah, we've already talked a couple times this episode about the psychology of football. It's something that we don't
Mm.
really see, but the psychology of the fourth week that Joe Burrow puts up 40 points and they still lose. I mean, how do you go out there and you say, guys, we can do this when you know, hey, I've been throwing 4 touchdowns a game, throwing 400 yards. Chase Brown's been rushing for 100 yards a game. Jamar is getting 150 a game. That's great for fantasy football, but how do you go out there as a football player and say, guys, let's put our best foot forward because we believe in the guys across from us? Because you can't. And so I think it's tough. You saw this actually with the Jets defense with their offense being so abysmal. The Jets defense was a lockdown defense a couple years ago, and then last year everybody was like, "Well, the Jets defense is going to keep them in it." But when you keep a team to 7 points and you lose, I mean that's pretty demoralizing to say it almost doesn't matter what I do. Like you can't. I mean, when you're Patrick Mahomes' defense, you say, "I know that guy is going to go down and score. I'm gonna give it all. I'm gonna give it my all this rep." But I mean, when you're Joe Burrow. You're gonna say, am I gonna extend the play and get hit again? Maybe get hurt? I mean, what's the point? We're gonna lose 45 to 40 or 45 to 30. It doesn't matter. So I think there's kind of both sides of that. I think they're gonna throw a lot. They're gonna be really good, and hopefully their defense performs at least somewhat decently. And that all hinges on a lot on Trey Hendrickson. Alrighty, that is all the NFL news that we have. I think we're gonna take a break and we will be right back. Welcome back. So we realized when we were going over episode one that we didn't really explain kind of what we're doing here or where we came from or why. I mean, just why are we doing this? So this podcast is called the Sweaty Fantasy Football Podcast. We got that name from our main dynasty league that Zach and I are in together, and our other co-hosts that will be joining us. Who knows when? Every couple episodes. Um, they all they all play in it, and we're hoping to have pretty much everybody in that league in it. So about we were looking at the math. It's 10 years ago that I started playing fantasy football, which is kind of crazy. I was 12, I was in seventh grade. Had a friend that asked me, "Hey, do you want to play some fantasy football?" I was like, never played that before. I've watched some NFL games. But yeah, let's give it a shot. And so we played that league through middle school and then on through high school. And our junior year of high school, we started a dynasty league because we were like, well, we played fantasy football for a while. Let's try out this dynasty thing. And there were some it was with all of our buddies from high school, and they as they went to college and moved on with their lives, there was some of them that really didn't care about fantasy football anymore, and that's fine. Everybody has their own hobbies, but a lot of them just kind of checked out, and we were like, well, there's about five of us that are really into this whole fantasy football thing, and we want to make like a really good dynasty league. But there's a lot of people in here that like you're doing your scouting, you're watching games, and you're like, oh, I really want that guy on my team. And you go and check, and you say, oh, he's on that guy's team. I can't get that guy. There's just no way for me to get that guy. So we decided to set up a second dynasty league. There was, I think, four of us or five of us from that original Pullman High School dynasty league that we set up that really wanted to make an active league that everybody traded and everybody was active in the chat and we could kind of chat about football and bounce trades off of each other, and just kind of have fun, talk about football and be a lot more engaged than we were in that dynasty league because it wasn't really that much fun for those of us that really wanted like we wanted to sweat about fantasy football probably more than you should, but that's neither here nor there. So one of the guys in the league, Braden, who Zach is friends with and roommates with and should be on this podcast every couple weeks. Don't know what his schedule looks like, but he'll be on this podcast. He said, I know a bunch of guys that really like fantasy football. And so we had five guys that came in from the PHS Dynasty League, and then five guys that Braden was either friends with or his dad's also in the league. So some people that he knew football and would be really interested in doing a dynasty league. And so we called that league Sweaty Dynasty because we all sweat, we all try way too hard at fantasy football. We have thousands of messages in that chat. We talk pretty much all day, every day, even though we all work full-time jobs. It's probably not great. But I mean, we're trading all the time. We're talking about football. During the season, we do chili dog challenges. I mean, we have a last place loser license plate that Zach has right now on his motorcycle. Looks very nice. Saw a picture of it the other day.
I've eaten a lot of chili dogs, and I display my losership to all 6 million people in Phoenix. Yeah, it's sucks being at the bottom. I came in when it truly is sweaty because the guy I came in for got booted for minor inactivity. I don't think he had ever failed to set a lineup. I could be wrong on that. You can fact check me there, but I booted him so that I could get in and really be aggressive, and I am. I actually messaged Sleeper Support yesterday or the day before to see if they could tell us if we were the league with the most chats of all time in a sleeper chat. They are not able to do that. Don't waste your time. They will not give up their precious data. But
Okay.
yeah, it's super sweaty, super fun. It's it's aggressive. It's very aggressive.
Yeah, it's very aggressive. So the first year that we were in it, my brother, who was in the league, won. We're hoping to have him on because he absolutely nuked a team that Gabe took over. One of the other guys, he took over. That team is really bad. He's definitely in the hunt for the number one overall pick, whoever that turns out being. Um,
Guaranteed. He's got the guaranteed 101, I believe.
yeah, he might accidentally win a game if somebody really wets the bed, but I mean, he's not going to go into any week saying, you know what, I think I've got a real chance here. And I mean, yeah, so it's just been a really fun time. we were chatting all the time about football, sometimes about life, but mostly about football. And like I was doing power rankings every week. I would on Sunday night I would sit down and type up power rankings every week. Zach has started doing trade rankings. Every time we've done a trade, he writes a little breakdown on the trade, what grade each team gets, what hole it fills, if they overpaid, underpaid, got a steal, whatever. He does that, and it was kind of interesting. I was laying in bed at 11:30 on a Friday night typing up my 2025 power rankings, and my wife turned over and she says, "Why aren't you in bed?" I said, "Oh, I'm typing up my power rankings." And she said, "There's no way you're putting this much effort into it and not making money off of it. This is absolutely insane." So I woke up that next morning and I was like, "Hey, we should do a podcast." And it's something I've kind of thought about before just because we talk about football so much. Um, but I was like, yeah, if I'm writing power rankings at 11:30 at night for about an hour and a half, that's probably a good sign that this is something that I really care about. And so starting a podcast would be cool. So that's our origin is from the Sweaty Fantasy Football League, and we care about fantasy football a lot. And so it kind of just made sense that the name of this podcast was going to be the Sweaty Fantasy Football Podcast.
Love it. I love I love spending the time. I love doing doing the trade grades and giving out a whole lot of D's and not a lot of A's. I love. I did when we did our rookie draft this year. I wrote a basically an article at that point. I did 3,200 words on just graded every pick and then gave overall grades for everyone who took more than one draft pick. And I did not give the number one grade to myself. That's somewhere that me and you differ pretty heavily. Is I think that nah, I'm just kidding. I gave myself third, so I was generous. I was very generous.
There you go. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun doing this. Like I said, we're hoping to get all eight other managers, plus my brother who, I mean, he's going to college and decided that fantasy football wasn't his full-time hobby, which
Embarrassing.
I know embarrassing.
I'm just kidding.
So we're hoping to have everybody on at some point. We'll obviously keep these going throughout the whole off season, and then during the season we'll do power rankings, trade analysis, because we got a lot of trades that go down in our league. I'm sure this year is going to be no different. So we'll grade trades, do power rankings, do some NFL stuff. Zach's probably going to do some betting stuff. We'll talk about dynasty. I mean, we're sweaty. We look at everything, or we try to look at everything. So we'll talk about just about anything fantasy football related outside of IDP. Have you ever played in an IDP league?
I haven't ever played IDP. I don't think I want to. I don't think I want to
No.
learn all that. I think that defensive stats are so noisy. You know what I mean? I think that I don't want to try and predict who's going to get an interception on a week to week basis. I think that's a lot more variance. Obviously, fantasy is very high variance, but I don't need that much variance. I'll stick to my fantasy. How about DFS? Do you do any DFS?
I've dabbled in it once or twice. I haven't really gotten into it big time. I'm mostly a redraft and dynasty guy. I'm definitely not opposed to it. IDP is just it's too much. Like I know pretty much all the depth charts for like receivers and running backs. I even know decent amount of the backup quarterbacks. But like we were looking at NFL news just to make sure we didn't miss anything in the news segment, and I was seeing some backup D tackle that I'd never heard of in my life getting signed to the Ravens. And I was just like, I don't care that much about defense. Offense is the fun one to watch. And so I haven't really dabbled in IDP or DFS. DFS is kind of it's more I would definitely be more willing to try that one than IDP. Are you a pretty big DFS guy?
I'm not really actually. I prefer my standard parlays, but every once in a while I'll get a free DFS lineup through DraftKings or something like that, and I go put it together. I won't have a whole lot of analysis on DFS. It's not really my wheelhouse. It is fun when you win. Maybe I'll get into it a little more. Maybe we need to be putting together a league lineup or something on Sundays to see if we can hit it big, do the tournaments or something. But I'm not a big DFS guy. Most of my analysis will be on a dynasty basis, a little bit of redraft. I'm not in any keeper leagues. I've never played in a keeper league. I'm pretty all or nothing. I'm either redrafting or having a dynasty team.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to try a keeper league in a bit, but I think part
My
of it, oh,
sorry, go ahead.
go for it.
Oh, I was gonna say if I try another league, it'll be two tight end. That's my baby. I love two tight end leagues. I'm not in any right now. I was in one last year. That's if I want to get cute, I'll do a two tight end league. I love my 12 personnel. I'm a
That would be intense. I mean,
It's fun.
it's hard to find good starting guys in one quarterback leagues. I mean, you look at the dynasty rankings, and I mean, two of the top five guys are Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, who've never taken a snap because the dynasty landscape is so barren. I mean, you are just hungry for anybody. I mean, the guy that drafted Brock Bowers, I mean, unfortunately, it was Braden in our league, but the guy that drafted Brock Bowers is living life on easy mode right now because he has a plug and play. He has 1 week of the year that he has to worry about it. Um, so two tight end, I can't even, that would be,
Oh, it's so fun. You get down to week 13 and you're looking at like Luke Musgrave and Hunter Henry, and you got to make a decision. Like, oh, I live for it. I live for making the tight end position important. I believe in that a lot.
do you like tight end premium?
I hate it. I know that's funny. I'm a PPR hater as well. I believe there's no inherent value to catching the football. It's what you do with it. It's the yards you gain from it. Every couple of weeks on Twitter, we see a cut up of, oh, here's two players scoring 1.6 fantasy
Hmm.
points, and one of them's like an angry run from a running back just bulldozing people for 16 yards, and then you've got just like the ugliest catch and fall down for 6 yards from a wide receiver. And I believe in standard scoring. The dynasty league that I commission is it's actually points per first down. So you get a little bit of that. Most catches go for first downs. So you do still reward that. There is still, I believe it's still half or quarter point PPR. So you get a little bit for the reception so that it's balanced scoring. So that guys like Josh Jacobs, who get a ton of first downs, aren't just completely overpowered. But I really enjoy playing points per first down. Give the tush push that extra point it deserves for extending the drive, and then yeah, no points per reception. It's not inherently valuable, and you can't reward it.
There you go. You heard it here first. Two tight end, no PPR leagues are the way to go. That's what I heard out of that.
We get nasty. We get nasty with it.
We do. All right, that's kind of where we come from, as far as the Dynasty League, and that's the league that you'll hear us reference quite a bit. We'll talk about trades. We'll do some more power rankings for that as we go along, and we'll have some members on there from the Sweaty Dynasty League. Alrighty. And then lastly, or maybe not lastly, we'll see. I guess we're making this up as we go. We have a question for you. We got into a pretty heated debate. I don't know if it was necessarily you and me. Trevor, who will be on in a couple weeks. We might want to revisit this with him once he gets back on. But the question in our league is about trading strategy. Do you lowball? Do you go in and you say, hey, Jamar Chase for a first? And then the other person says, absolutely not. There is absolutely no way. And do you start the trade out like that and try to get somebody to counter, try to meet in the middle, or do you try to go for a fair value? I mean, obviously you're going to try to make your side the winning side, but you go into it and offer a somewhat fair value and then try to just kind of whittle it down, or do you go way apart and try to meet in the middle? I know you have a pretty firm stance on this one.
It's funny because I have no problem with a low ball. I love a good low ball. My my nickname in the league is low baller. That my team name is low baller. I believe in a good low ball. I think it's important when trading. If you're just kind of scoping out the trade window and looking at who's available and who may not be, send some trades out there to gauge value. I think that if you get a counter, you learned something. You learned about how this person values this player, and you can decide whether there's a there's an opportunity to scrape value there. But if I get lowballed and I feel like I got lowballed, I will not send a counter. If we are not close, I'm not going to waste my time increasing the offer you sent me by two firsts. If that's how far apart we are, that's how far apart we are. I love getting lowballs off. I try to get off at least a couple of them a day because eventually you're going to find someone who values that player closer to how you do, closer to giving you a discount, and you'll get a couple of trades to go that way. If you really are trying to get a trade to go through, if you are weak somewhere, you're trying to fill a hole, you really want to have a player on your roster, you should probably come with the real offer. You should come with the competitive offer. But I will never play myself out of a fleece. I will never take the opportunity to fleece someone out of my bag before I really get started. The first offer you get from me, it's usually going to be pretty low.
Yeah, I will say you don't want to overplay your hand and go into it and say, so George Pickens just got traded, so I'm going to go offer a first because I think he's worth a first. And the guy holding him says, "Oh, I would have traded him for a second." But since you're offering a first, I'm not going to say no to that. So you definitely don't want to play yourself into that. You and me have run into this issue a couple times. You're trying to get Drake London off my team. You are a Drake
I've
London lover. I am a
I've
Drake
tried.
London manager.
I've tried pretty hard. I love Drake London. I really have. I offered an Omarion package, and I'm in love with Omarion. I really like Drake London. He's a stud.
I like Drake London too, but I mean, I'll get a notification um, that Zach Baker sent me a trade, and I go, I bet it's for Drake London, and it's some hodgepodge of tissues and empty Doritos bags, plus a second, and then a third round pick swap. And he's like, okay, okay, listen, hear me out. It's always a good place to start when you start a trade negotiation with "hear me out."
The day it stops working is the day I'll stop trying. It's not working right now for for Drake London, but there have been some people. Chuba Hubbard. We talked about Chuba earlier in the episode. I got Chuba Hubbard straight up for Nick Chubb. I believe it was actually a week or two before Jonathan Brooks went down. So hey, sometimes if it pays off one in every 30 offers, man, I'll pay my dues. I'll do the grunt work. I'll dig the trenches of sending the low balls because eventually when it hits, I'll be sitting with the Chuba Hubbard on my team. I'm gonna get my Drake London for Jack Best deal done, man. Don't you worry.
You just gotta keep digging to find those stats. Remember the first time that we talked, you sent me a voicemail on
Oh
why.
no.
Do you remember that?
I do. I know exactly where you're going.
On why Calvin Ridley for CeeDee Lamb straight up was going to be a great deal for me.
Oh man. There were like two or three, it was like a 3 minute voice memo. And I think there were like
It
two or three
was.
different times in that voice memo where I realized like, wow, I am wasting my time right now. That was more of one where I was hoping to have a conversation after. I was really steaming up Calvin Ridley and really tearing down the guy I'm trading for, doing the old Trevor special. Um, so just really pulling all the stops out for that one, hoping to have a conversation, and it wasn't quite enough if you couldn't have
Yeah.
guessed that by the fact that it was Calvin Ridley for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, you pulled out some stats. You tried to make the stats sound real cute. You're like, I mean, name value, it's not great. You got this 29-year-old receiver with Will Levis, and then you got this 26-year-old receiver who at that point had Cooper Rush, but it's a dynasty league. You said, so I mean, you don't have a good quarterback either way, and you had some stats and you tried to sugarcoat it, but yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, yeah, it's CeeDee Lamb for Calvin Ridley.
What's funny is I don't remember. I don't think you had CeeDee Lamb on your team at the point of when you played in the semifinals. But if you would have had Calvin Ridley in your flex spot, you would have won that week and gone to the Super Bowl. I did make sure to go and check.
Well, I also
I'm gaslighting you. That's not true. I made that up off the top of my head.
I
One of
definitely
the
did check. I traded CeeDee Lamb. It might be one of my bigger regrets, the trade that I did for CeeDee Lamb. That was a bad one. I mean, if Marv pays that, I traded him for Marv. It wasn't straight up, but that was kind of the bones of the deal. So if Marv works out, I guess I wouldn't have got fleeced. But the thing that makes me mad is if I hadn't done the trade, I would have won the championship. If I still had CeeDee
Oh,
Lamb
I
on
didn't
my
know
team,
that.
I went back and
Did
I
not
did the
know that.
math. If I still had CeeDee Lamb, because I didn't even start Marv championship week, because at that point he was pretty much unstartable. I mean,
Yeah.
you had Kyler 5'6" guy scrambling around, Marv 50 yards down the field wide open, and Kyler
Boxing
running
with
for his
George
life.
Pickens down there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did do that math. There's not a whole lot of things worse than going back and looking at a trade and realizing you got absolutely hosed.
Yeah. Well, if it's really tough having Marvin Harrison and that memory on your team, I'm sure there's a deal we can find where, I may even be willing to dip into my Torrey Hortons or maybe a Pat Freiermuth, man. We may be able to find something here. Let me know if some pick swaps and fob interest you on top of that.
This is why I love Zach. He's just a generous guy. We can
You
always
know,
get a deal done.
I'm losing. I'm doing you a favor. I think I'm losing that.
The classic.
But
The classic. I'm doing you a service. Actually, if you look at these stats, Marv is gonna suck for the rest of his career. So I mean, Zach's really doing me a service by taking him off my team, unclogging that roster spot, if you will. Um,
uh,
yeah, Trevor, when he comes on, again, we'll revisit this trading question. because he was pretty strong. He had a pretty strong take, and I'll let him share that. But sometimes you just don't have the energy. You see that low ball come in, and you're like, really? That is so far apart. I'm basically gonna have to recreate this trade to make it even remotely close to anything I would ever accept.
The trade that brought on the conversation was Marshawn Lloyd and the current champions 2026 second round pick for AJ Brown. And obviously you see that and you kind of forget about it before you even get the DM closed because no. And he was not thrilled with the fact that I did not counter that. I didn't know what to tell him. I guess I could have sent him AJ Brown for Jaden Daniels and Justin Jefferson to kind of give him like a little glimpse into what he just offered me, but we'll see if he has a rebuttal when he's on.
Man,
Maybe me and him can go head to head.
that's just insane. You got Marshawn Lloyd, who missed his entire rookie season, maybe can become the backup for Josh Jacobs, and a second. So you're potentially in a second for a receiver who's going to be a top 10 receiver this year. There's obviously some questions for Dynasty, but for this year, there's not really any questions for AJ Brown. I mean, so for Marshawn Lloyd and a 2026 second, I mean, that is,
Yeah. The current least valuable second that you can have, because it belongs to the current defending champion. It was crazy. I felt a little insulted. I felt like he was telling me I didn't know. I don't know ball. It was a you don't know ball offer. But I'll get him back. I'll send him like a third for Terry McLaurin or something, and do some rage baiting.
yeah, I mean, that's just insane. And it's crazy because he just traded away AJ Brown to you too. I mean, you just got AJ Brown from him, and now he's like, oh, by the way, I want him back, but I'll give you an empty bag of Doritos and a dirty sock for him. So here you go, take it and run.
It was Braden. It was Braden who gave me AJ Brown. But he knows you can't beat Braden without him. So maybe if he wants to pay up, maybe if he's feeling generous, we'll get something done. I wish he was here so we could go at it. But
Oh, sorry, that was Trevor that offered that, not Braden.
yeah, Trevor.
Right.
Trevor offered the yeah. Usually if we're talking about an insane offer, it's probably Trevor. Yeah,
Yeah, I
love
mean
you, love you,
that's
Trevor.
that's just absolutely insane to try to come into a trade and say, "Hey, okay, hear me out. I know we can meet somewhere in the middle." It's like we are so far from the middle.
He was
There's
mad at me. He really wanted me to counter. Maybe if you had 40 Marshawn Lloyds, we could.
even then, that's too many roster spots.
Yeah,
You
have
kind
to
of get
drop
to
everybody.
you kind of get to that point where it's like you're just unloading your entire taxi squad onto me, and I'm gonna have to drop players. I mean,
Yep.
that's kind of another fantasy football trading strategy is doing the 3-for-1. Because if you're the player that moves the three players to get the stud, then you also get to go to the waiver wire and pick those two guys that you've been eyeing, but you don't know which guy to drop. Well, now you get the stud and your two guys off of the waiver wire. Whereas if you're the one getting a bunch of players, yeah, you might be the back of your bench might be a little bit stronger, but you're cutting guys that other guys are going to potentially go pick up. So that's kind of a interesting strategy. The people that want to do the 3-for-1, and there's people that want to be on either side of that pretty consistently.
Always scary to be giving up the worst or the best player in the deal. Always scary, but sometimes it works out. Sometimes it works out. Braden traded away Jamar Chase preseason and went on to win the championship. Picked up AJ Brown in that deal, and Kyle Pitts. So
And let's not
mega
forget,
deal.
so that deal was with me, and that's a deal that I have analyzed quite a bit because I mean, I've gone down all the rabbit holes on this. He got Chris Olave. I gave him Chris Olave. I'll go pull it up, but I gave him Chris Olave. Um,
You also got Bo Nix in that deal. I remember.
yeah, I mean, I didn't end up hanging on to him, but that was a really good deal. So I gave up AJ, or so yeah, I gave up AJ Brown, Kyle Pitts, Chris Olave, a 2025 second, and a 2026 third. So those were kind of irrelevant. So the bones of the deal were AJ Brown, Pitts, and Olave for Gabe Davis. Don't care. Jamar Chase and Bo Nix.
In hindsight, we were talking about that trade as something that Braden couldn't turn down, and in hindsight, that's I don't think you'd reverse that trade if you could.
No, in hindsight, that's a trade that you would never accept. not never turned down.
Right.
Because I mean, Kyle Pitts at that point, I mean, there really shouldn't have been any hype, and I'm kind of glad I got Braden on that one because Kyle Pitts at that point had put up like 3 straight years of doing nothing, but he's still
This
at
year's
the
the year,
eight.
bro.
This year's the
This year's the
year.
year.
I know every other year he hasn't been, but do you remember when he was the eighth overall pick? And he was so young.
He was picked in the first round of this league startup, was he not? I believe he was a first round pick in the startup. I'm gonna
I
find
will
that
have,
out while you
I mean,
let's
yeah.
see.
So that trade went down. Um, and I think he probably would have won that trade with Jamar Chase. Anyways, where I was getting to with that was I gave him Olave as part of that deal, and he flipped Olave into Brian Thomas. I think he got, let's see, Olave. So Braden traded Chris Olave to Tyler, and he traded him for, so he traded Chris Olave in a third for Algier, Brian Thomas, and a 2027 second, which obviously in hindsight is an absolute steal. That's kind of one of those things where when you're trading picks, it looks fine at the in the moment, and then once you make those picks, if you hit, then it turns into a situation where you couldn't get Olave in a third for Brian Thomas straight up done. You just couldn't get that deal done. And then to add on Tyler Algier, who's a clear-cut great handcuff, and a 2027 second out of it, that was a steal for Braden. Brian Thomas, we touched on it last episode, but I lost 203 to 205 in the semifinals, which nobody's ever scored over 200 and lost. In that game, I was winning. I was sitting on the couch watching football, and I'm winning for most of the day. And then the chat blows up. And I was watching Red Zone, so I didn't have the Jaguars game directly pulled up, but I'm watching the game. My phone blows up and they're like, "Oh my goodness, Brian Thomas just scored a 70-yard touchdown. 60, 70, somewhere in there. Massive touchdown." And I was like, "Ooh, it's getting a little bit close now, huh?" And he was what put Braden over the top. He got him to the 205. Um, and he beat me and got himself the championship. So that trade, even though I got Jamar Chase out of it in a roundabout way, actually lost me the league. So heard it here first. Jamar Chase lost me the championship.
Uh, Kyle Pitts, 1.9 in the sweaty startup. One pick ahead of Lamar Jackson. Fun.
I think there's a guy that you could debate there. That Lamar is probably a guy that you'd want more.
Trading away
Oh,
Lamar was the hardest thing I've ever done, man.
what did you get for him? I can't remember. It was a couple first, wasn't it?
Let me see if I can from here go to his history. I did get two firsts. I also traded Tyreek in that deal. No, it doesn't look like I can get his history from here. So I traded away when I joined the league last offseason, probably 14-ish months ago. I traded away Lamar Jackson, Tyreek Hill, and Alvin Kamara, and my second round pick this year, which ended up being the 210. I was going fully into rebuild. So I got
I
back
have it
Brock
pulled up.
Purdy. You can see it. Okay, so I got back Brock Purdy. I got the 102 and the 108. 102, I traded back from one spot, picked up a future first, some seconds, and a third. 108, I took Xavier Worthy. Jalen Warren was not what I thought he was going to be. He's serviceable. He's still on my roster. He'll be there for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the player. Um, if you don't include some of the trades I made after, some of the pick swaps I did after, it doesn't look great. But Caleb Williams and Brock Purdy for Lamar Jackson is somewhat how I justify it now. Now that Tyreek is being drafted outside of the top 100 in startups. So getting two quarterbacks in a super flex league. When I joined the league, my quarterback two was Ryan Tannehill. Or
Oh
no, it was actually
yeah.
Will Levis. It was my QB two is Will Levis. My QB three was Ryan Tannehill, and my QB four was Tim Boyle. When I was joining the league, I was a little iffy. I was like, okay, like what's the plan? I saw Tim Boyle's name on my roster, and I burnt it down. I said, you know what? Give me every draft pick you can, and I'll wear the license plate for a few years while I figure this out. I'm not going to try and win a championship with Tim Boyle on my team.
Yeah, that's
Jesus.
a name that I haven't heard in a little bit, and probably outside of maybe revisiting this trade again in a year, probably will never hear again. Yeah, I mean,
Man,
I mean, you got a pretty good deal out of it. Um, Yeah,
It
Brock
set me
Purdy's
up where I
gone.
am
Yeah.
now, and that I'm grateful for. I believe I have 8 first round picks in the next 3 drafts. I got a mess of seconds to go along with it. I think I have 8 or 9 seconds in the next 3 drafts. So the building blocks are there. I have Drake May, future MVP. I have Ashton Genty, future Hall of Famer. So
Yeah.
I've got a foundation.
I think the last thing I have to say about trading is like it just makes it fun. Just makes it so much fun to have different players on your team. Um, to it's kind of just like playing the stock market. You're trying to buy high, sorry, sell high and buy low.
No, no, I think you do like buying high. I think that's kind of your MO. I don't think that was a misstep at all.
Um, yeah, it's just fun. Like you get to have conversations with people. You just get to have some fun, make some trades, see different players on your team, try to fleece some guys, make fun of your league mates in the chat. Say, guys, look how bad I fleeced this guy, or say, look at this bag of chips that this guy offered me for my stud. It's just really fun. And there's lots of ways you can go about it, and all of them are just kind of a good time, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It's the beauty of Dynasty, man.
Yup. And it's fun to do it in redraft too. I just like trading in general. It's kind of fun to have leagues so you can just trade.
True. True, true, true.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's probably it from us for this week. This show will be up probably Wednesday night, late Wednesday night, and we'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be posting this on YouTube and Spotify for now, and hopefully next week Braden will be on the podcast. So far, it's just been a two-man show, and I've enjoyed it. It's good to get other people's opinions, but so far it's been a good ride. I'm really excited. Yeah.
It's been good. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully we have some more people on. It is my goal. I have a segment I want to go through here in the coming weeks where I want to try and get at least one trade done live. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to work. I got some ideas. So yeah, stay tuned. We're going to have some more fun stuff. Hopefully we'll have some trades to break down. Maybe give us some new power rankings. I'll do some trade grades. Stick around. Smash that subscribe button. You know how it goes.
Make sure
It
you
was
hit
good
that bell
talking to
till it
you.
goes ding.
Oh, absolutely. All of that. All of that. Well, it was
Yeah.
great talking to you, man. And I'll talk to you next week.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.